going to be responding to Star Wars Theory, who's going to look at an article that's going to be very critical of the prequels. Now, we've been doing things on Star Wars Theory sort of as a YouTube celebrity and just as a kind of YouTuber influential within Star Wars, period, but not looking at his actual content. So, this is a good, I think, sample of what you expect from him. And unfortunately, it's kind of mediocre. So I'm with him most of the way. I do think the article is too hostile and is somewhat distorting what Ewan McGregor says. Essentially, Ewan McGregor, and he's been saying this for a while, has been critical of certain aspects of the prequels. And I do think Star Wars Theory is correct that this is based on certain mythologies of how the prequels worked. But then you start saying some crazy stuff, which I'm like, okay, I was with you, but then you're going down a route I can't follow.
Finding something that literally changed the way we play video games, the way we make movies today. Motion capture was created with Jar Jar Binks and Ahmed Best at the hands of ILM and pioneered by George Lucas, who kept pushing the envelope. So it's unfortunate that this reporter wants to, report on such things in such a limited knowledge manner, if that's even a sentence. But anyways, I digress. On to the meat of the matter. In a Hollywood Reporter profile, McGregor recalls the horror of George Lucas piling unnecessary CGI into the prequels because Lucas loves technology and loves pushing into that realm. He wanted more and more control over what we see in the background. Right. And the actor agrees with fans that the visuals absolutely sucked. I'm going to hold a poll. Do you think the visuals of the prequels for their time sucked? I thought they were quite revolutionary, and I mean, the fight with the Gungans and the Separatists were kind of the first time anyone ever did a massive battle like that. And of course, as we learned today, with the interview with Dennis Muren, then it was later, it was Middle Earth, it was Lord of the Rings, and so on and so forth, which really, Star Wars started everything off with that. The actor agrees with fans that the visuals really sucked, with Revenge of the Sith mostly consisting of blue screens instead of the detailed sets we love from the original trilogy. So this person needs to go watch the behind-the-scenes DVD of, which you guys have seen with me, of all of the countless months, years even, of all these professional artists making these beautiful 3D models of.
Okay, so in terms of the prequels and special effects, yes, I do think that there's a lot of deceptions as well as mythologies and rumors about how much the green screen was used and how much or how little practical sets and effects were used. So if you do think there was too much CGI, and I myself fall into that camp, I do defend the prequels on many aspects, but I did find the CGI at certain times a little alienating. I agree that this is often exaggerated by opponents. Yes, there is a lot of green screen, no doubt about that, but it's not just green screen. They did do a lot more than that. So if you think the main problem with the prequels are the special effects, those can be a problem, but they have to be judged contextually and relatively. Did George go a little too far with digital effects and using the digital camera too much? I think so. But if you think that's the only major issue with the prequels, then you need to do a little bit more research. And clearly this writer of the article doesn't really know the prequels at any real degree. But then, of course, Star Wars Theory has to go much further because, again, he's a big admirer of George Lucas. Nothing wrong with that. I myself am more critical of Lucas, but then he starts saying some just crazy stuff, and you're like, wait, what? Whoa, 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 whoa. Careful now, careful.
The originals in 1977, and then up until 83 with Return of the Jedi. He wanted to do so many different things, and as we also saw in today's interview with Dennis Muren, he said that George told him he got only 50% of the movie that he really saw in his head because of the technology that was out at the time. So for him to get access to all this stuff, it's like a little kid in a candy store, and he has access to buy all the candy that he wants now. Whereas before, he would walk by it every day and he couldn't afford anything. So maybe he did go crazy in a little few places, but who the heck are we to judge George Lucas on his own freaking movie? And as for Ewan McGregor saying that it was very difficult to act, with just green screens or blue screens, I'm sure it was, but he did an amazing job as Obi-Wan Kenobi, and so did Hayden Christensen, and that's given what they were given in,
Okay, so he was fine in defending certain aspects of the prequels and sort of just calling out this writer and being too partisan. I think that was fine. I was with him. I think for the most part we're in agreement. But then he starts saying, well, we shouldn't be judging George Lucas, period. And I'm like, What? No, that doesn't make any sense. That doesn't even make sense in this video. You were just praising Lucas as a revolutionary filmmaker, so that's making a judgment. You're saying he's a great filmmaker. So that doesn't make any sense. It doesn't cohere with your other statements where you clearly don't like the sequels. You hate The Last Jedi. You like Rise of Skywalker because it basically tried to wipe out The Last Jedi. So you have made judgments. Your judgments may not be good, but you have made judgments about these things, and now you're saying, yeah, let's just not judge George. George, we don't judge George. George is just here to be admired. And I'm like, what? That is kind of like the worst stereotypes of people have about the prequels and their defenders saying, well, they don't even want to have a dialogue. They're just like, yeah, George Lucas is our god. We love George. That's the end of it. I don't understand. Either you get that the prequels were masterpieces or you don't. And that's it. And I mean, really, just using that poll doesn't make any sense. Okay, so, which is impressive, 500,000 people agree the prequels are great. But then we have Red Letter Media. They have millions of views of their videos, and they're very critical of the prequels. So, which is which? I mean, again, numbers can be manipulative. So, I understand his intention. He's coming from a good place of just wanting the prequels to be not just viciously attacked or falsely attacked. But that's a different story from saying they shouldn't be judged at all. That's such an incredibly radical stance on so many levels. And he's clearly being a complete hypocrite and self-contradictory because clearly he judges these things and just saying, oh, just in closing, yeah, we're not going to judge George. Like, George, nah, he's beyond judgment. I'm like, what? No, that's just nuts. That's crazy. This has nothing to do with the prequels. Has nothing to do with films. Has nothing to do with works of fiction. You make judgments. You make judgments about aesthetics. You make judgments about scientific theories. You make judgments all the time. Making judgments is almost inevitable in being a human being. There's no way you could just suspend judgments on all questions. You could be a radical skeptic and agnostic on 95% of the universe in the world, but you are going to make judgments about certain things, including Star Wars. To just say magically, we're going to block that off because, I'm Star Wars Theory, this is my channel. On this channel, we just don't judge. And you make judgments all the time. I'm like, it's just nuts. It's just nuts. So, again, that's a kind of nice sample of Star Wars Theory. Sometimes he's pretty good. Sometimes he's pretty bad. The average is just, it's okay. But then he'll just keep inserting these crazy statements out of nowhere. And you're like, what? Huh? No, that can't be right. What did you just say? That's crazy. Even for you, that's really, really quite nuts. But that's what you're going to get from Star Wars Theory. So we're going to look at more of his content, try to fairly represent him a good side and bad side. And this is sort of midway, but even here, he's going to just go down a really crazy path, at least in my opinion. All right, Star Wars Analyzed on the continual debate over the prequels and the legacy of George Lucas. Thanks for listening.